The New Testament reading is from Paul's letter to the Ephesians, probably written by a close follower of Paul, who knew Paul's teaching very well and applied it to the situation of churches in and around the ancient city of Ephesus and what is now Turkey. And in this passage, this section of the letter is about Christian living, how Christians are called to live differently than those people, the surrounding pagan culture. Be careful then how you live, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of the time, because the days are evil. So do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit. As you sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs among yourselves, singing and making melody to the Lord in your hearts, giving thanks to God the Father at all times and for everything, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I had an unusual experience driving up here from Parker today, coming into 285 and then going through Turkey Creek Gulch. And the speed limit there is 45, so I'm careful to go down to that level because Morrison's finest are always there watching. Well, going 45, a red Ferrari zooms by me in the left-hand lane. Then another red Ferrari, and I thought, what in the world is this, the Denver Red Ferrari Club? And then a blue Maserati. And then 3 more red Ferraris. And they went ahead of me, they took the turn up through Parmalee Gulch, and I couldn't keep up. Well, the reading from the book of the Kings, first book of Kings, King Solomon asks God for wisdom in ruling Israel. My hunch is that, like me, you aspire to live in a way that is wise. And if so, you'll join me in welcoming the message from this letter to the Ephesians. It's a subtle but serious call to wise living, which happens in a very personal way through our relationship with Christ. So as I said, this section of Ephesians is an appeal for a changed lifestyle, that Christians should be distinctive in their living. And the verse prior to this reading goes like this: you were taught to put away your former way of life, your old self, corrupt and deluded by its lusts, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to clothe yourselves with the new self, created according to the likeness of God, in true righteousness and holiness. So that's the overall new way of life that's expected. An important feature of that is wise living. In our passage for today, be careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. And then it says, so do not be foolish. So I am sure, so we all have a choice here of living as wise people or as foolish people. It's up to us. And I would think that if we want to live as a foolish person, now a foolish person is lacking in sense and judgment and discretion. A proverb says that a foolish son is a calamity of his father. One writer says, may heaven save you from a foolish friend. So certainly we do not want to be foolish. We want instead, Marilyn already stole my crown. There was a purpose for this. It wasn't just left there for me. But a wise person is marked by deep understanding, a keen sense of discernment. Solomon asked God to give him an understanding mind that he might rule the people in a good way. Wisdom, one writer says, exceeds folly as light, or excels folly as light excels darkness. So one writer says that the letter to the Ephesians talked about how Christians are to live distinctly, and that there is a distinct Christian way of wise living. So the main question for us today, what does it mean to live wisely as a Christian? And I've approached this passage, as I first looked at this passage, I approached it like a detective approaches a mystery, trying to solve a mystery. And I guess I did it that way because Carol, my wife, and I like to watch some detective shows on TV, and one of those is Castle. Richard Castle, distinguished mystery novelist, his now wife, Kate Beckett, chief of detectives in the New York Police Department, and he for years has worked with her as a consultant in helping solve crimes. Now in this particular episode, Castle and his daughter from a previous marriage, Alexis, are on a flight to London, from New York to London. And early in the flight, the pilot, knowing of Castle's background with the police, tells him of a desperate problem. That Kyle Ford, the air marshal on the flight, had let her know that there was a security threat on the plane, and then he had gone missing. And so Castle, with Alexis and the chief flight attendant Debbie, begin to search the plane. They go down into the cargo hold, and there they find Kyle Ford's body. He's been murdered. So they go back up to the main compartment, the cabin, to find the murderer. That is the mystery that must be solved. Who is the murderer on the plane? And the attention, first of all, focused on a man named Aman Assad. Beckett has been notified back in New York of this problem, so she is doing research on the passengers on the plane and finds out that Assad is a Syrian and he has ties to ISIS. So as Castle is closing in on him, Assad goes into the laboratory and locks it up. And they can hear him talking on his phone to somebody. It'll be over soon. And they go down into the luggage compartment again and search for Assad's bags and find them, and there's no bomb. Fortunately, there's nothing to suggest that he is a terrorist. And so they go back up to the main compartment, and Assad, cleared from suspicion, helps them. He said, well, I saw Air Marshal Ford talking on a cell phone earlier in the flight. So Castle gets that cell phone and sees that there are several texts that somebody's threatening to bring down the plane. So Beckett calls Castle again and says there's a woman on the flight named Marilyn Stringer, who was a long-time executive for Oceanic Air, but was fired and she has a grudge against the airline. So as Castle approaches her, confronts her, finds a gun in her purse. But she says that it was not her gun. She had no knowledge of it. And when she heard that Air Marshal Ford is dead, she's amazed. She's shocked. And so Castle is starting to realize that this has got to be an inside job. And Beckett calls him again and says there's the flight attendant Debbie is one to watch. And just when Debbie realizes suspicion is turning to her, she takes the gun and points it at Castle and complains that she's been a flight attendant for 30 years and the airline had cut off her pension, and she was planning to steal a watch that a rich investor had bought and was being taken by a courier from New York to London. So she had stolen the watch, but had not meant for anybody to be killed. And so they solved the mystery that Debbie was the guilty one and she was taken into custody. Well, with the same detective's mindset, we now want to discern the meaning of what it is to live wisely as a Christian. And so we're going to approach this passage from Ephesians like a group of detectives approaching a case. We're going to look for clues. The first clue is in verse 16. Make the most of the time because the days are evil. Makes sense, doesn't it? A wise person will make the most of their time, but also recognize that it's not just our time, but it's God's time. A wise person will be judged as to how he or she uses his time, their time. The second clue, verse 17, understand what the will of the Lord is. So living wisely has something to do with understanding God's will. And in verse 18, be filled with the Spirit. So living wisely as a Christian means being filled with the Spirit. Now, while these are helpful clues, the decisive key, the most important clue is found in these words. As you are filled with the Spirit and sing and make melody, give thanks to God the Father at all times and for everything in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. So this is it, that for Christians, wise living has everything to do with our relationship with Jesus Christ. One writer says that the fact that God has been revealed in Jesus gives us the relationship with God through Christ. Now, years ago, early in my ministry, this was in Fort Worth, Colorado, I was active in the clergy group that met every month and got to know a little bit that Pastor Doug Trevithick of the Baptist church in town. And he came every now, not too often, but came to that group. And he was about my height, but had some heft to him, and a little older than me, and always had a serious look on his face. And I knew he was Baptist, so I knew he probably had some different views than I did on matters of belief and faith. So I was a little intimidated by him. One day, he did come to our clergy meeting, and afterwards I was visiting with him. We were talking about our understandings of Christ, getting into a theological conversation, and I was expressing some of my beliefs or my doctrines, and he interrupted me. He said, you know, it's all about the relationship. It's all about the relationship. We're called into relationship with Christ. And grudgingly, I have to admit, that comment has stayed with me over these many years, and Pastor Doug was right. It is all about the relationship. And this is my belief. I believe this relationship has two dimensions. Relation with Christ, that He is the Lord. He is at God's right hand. Now He is the ruler of the universe. We look at the mountain vistas surrounding us, and they can point our gaze up to the heavens and can think and imagine Christ in that way overall, who has the world in His hands, who knows its destiny. But the other dimension has to do with God and the world in Jesus, that God in the astounding act came into the world in the form of Jesus, born in humble surroundings, growing up with common people, spending a lot of time with the down and out. That God, showing God wants, in Jesus' part of everyday life, to be a friend of all, to be a friend of us, to be with us right now in our everyday lives. So put these two together, I believe that we are called to a relationship with Christ, a relationship of unheard of intimacy. An old Christian song, not too old, more modern song says, "You are my strength when I am weak. You are the treasure that I seek. You are my all and all. Seeking you as a precious jewel, Lord, to give up I'd be a fool. You are my all in all. When I fall down, you pick me up. When I am dry, you fill me up. You are my all and all. And so many times I have felt that when I am deficient in some way and I depend on that relationship, I am filled up in surprising ways. That emptiness of the soul or of the personality are filled up and I am made new. So I find that in this relationship with Christ, it's this way that we Christians live wisely. When I am focused on that relationship, it does take me higher. It takes me higher than the mountains. And makes my focus and my understanding greater. So that and I believe this can happen for all of us, and certainly has and does, so that we do have that deep understanding and that keen discernment. We have that understanding mind with which God blessed Solomon. So, we are wise. I'm wearing this for all of you. We are, I believe, wise and called to live wisely as Christians. And just as Castle and his helpers solved the mystery of who killed Air Marshal Ford, today we have solved the mystery of what it means to live wisely as a Christian. We have looked at the clues of making the most of time, of discerning God's will, of being filled with the Spirit. But for Christians, we know that the most important thing has to do with our relationship with Christ. To focus on that relationship. And it's through that we are in fact raised higher than the mountain peaks, and given that keen understanding and that wise discernment that can be a hallmark. It is a hallmark of our lives of faith.